today we have a viewer game that was submitted, and we are going to analyze it and see what feedback we can give. So we're gonna look from the white side, Nick DeRue fan. He's rated 1425. This is a rapid game. That's a pretty good rating, decent player against 1086, so significantly lower rated. So the first comment is when you're, 300 or 400 points higher rated than somebody, um, you're if you played your best openings, your best lines, and everything, you're gonna probably win 9 out of 10 times. And so now is your chance to try out, maybe a new opening that you're interested in, or a different line, or a different gambit, or something like that to make the game more interesting, because they're so much lower rated. So now's a good chance to work on things you wouldn't otherwise against a stronger player. Having said that, so white plays 1d4, good start. Black responds 1d5, not bad. Bishop f4. So I guess he's going for a London or a Jobava London. I'm not sure. We will find out. Black goes knight f6, standard developing move, developing the king's knight for eventual castling. Okay, he goes knight f3, so probably not a Jobava London. Still possible technically, but okay, knight f3, another nice developing move, heading towards the center. h6. So I want to pause here, and hopefully if you guys look at this move, you want it to feel wrong to you. Like you want to get that intuition that this is the wrong move, it's too slow, it's not developing. So this is just a waste of a move from my perspective, and there's really no point to it. It does control the g5 square, but that's completely irrelevant, has literally nothing to do with anything in this position. And these pieces are nice, they don't need to go to g5, they're perfectly nice where they are. And so he wasted a move that should have been used developing the light bishop, the knight, or creating an avenue for this guy. So I would say this is black's first move I don't like. It's not like it blunders mate or anything. It just, I think unless you're doing a concrete line that you already know, and you're, because you're higher rated and you know many different lines, I would say always err on the side of developing moves. So this is not a developing move. It's not even a move I like. So white goes e3. This I like. He opens up development for this bishop, defends the center. White has nice harmony right now. Black develops his bishop to f5, which is a nice developing move. And now I can see why he probably wanted to go h6, because he wanted to put his bishop here, and I guess if white goes knight h4 to hit it, he now has an escape square. Still, I prefer, for especially people rated 1000, to develop and just keep developing as fast as you can. Don't worry about more advanced stuff like this, trying to create escape squares for your bishops. It's not that it's bad, it's just gonna lead you astray when you're lower rated many times. So white goes c3, creating this type of London setup. I mean, c4 is probably the principal move, right? To go 2 squares. The d4 pawn is adequately protected. It doesn't need another defender. And c4 attacks the center. I think c4 is just an overall stronger move. However, whenever you move your pawn up 2 squares, it's always a bigger responsibility on your position because you have more holes and more pawns to defend. So it does make life slightly more difficult, I guess, calculation and understanding wise. So c3 is perfectly fine if that's the setup you want to play. Just know that c4 is also an option and probably a little better. So black goes e6, makes perfect sense. He opens up the diagonal for his bishop so that he can castle. So far so good. The game is pretty level. No one did anything egregiously wrong, so this is a game so far. Okay, move 6. He develops his bishop to its most natural square and contests black's bishop and fights for the e4 square. Right, it's also the most natural square for the bishop to go. If you go here, he'll just go here and kick you. If you go here, your knight's blocking your view and you're not fighting for the center and you're not contesting his knight's bishop. So bishop to d3 is the best square. Black declines the trade and pins the knight. It's fine. I mean, whether you trade for the bishop or trade for the knight, black's usually fine in both cases because as long as he gets this piece outside of this pawn chain, that's what he's more concerned about rather than which piece he trades it for. So if you take the knight, you leave the light square bishop on the board, and that's a really nice piece, right? It's white's good bishop. Oops. So that's the good thing about trading for the bishop. But if you, let's say you take the bishop, then the knight's still on the board, and the knight has the e5 square, which is a nice square for all of white's pieces. So taking one or the other, you know, you can choose which one you want to do. So he goes to pin the knight, and white goes h3. Now, I think this move is fine. I like this move. Now, why do I like this move, but I disliked h6? Isn't it the exact same thing? Well, not really. Not to me, anyway. Because this move comes with tempo attacking the bishop. So what you'll see, and I'll show you something, is the bishop takes and the queen takes. So I want you, if you look at this position, you'll see that white has two minor pieces and the queen out and developed. Black has just the knight. So we attacked his bishop with tempo. He took our knight, which helped develop our queen. And now we're ahead in development compared to black. So our move, h3, helped our development in relation to black's development. Now if we go back and we look at black's move, h6, right, that he didn't develop a piece. So before the move, we had two pieces developed, he had one. He could have evened it by developing a piece, but instead he moves this pawn, right? Now we get to develop a piece. So his move, h6, slowed down, basically did the same thing. It gave us the advantage and the lead in development, right? So his pawn move gave us the lead in development. And if we go forward to our pawn move, that gave us the lead in development. So that's the difference between our pawn move and his. They're not equal in that they're both good for us. So that's the difference. So now black develops his second piece and contests our bishop. Makes a lot of sense. Best square for the bishop, and he's ready to castle. Game's even. Anything goes. Knight goes to d2, kind of finishing the London setup in a way. So this is a perfectly fine move. Black takes the bishop. I don't like this move. it seems unnecessary to take the bishop. For example, if we take him, we help develop his queen. If he takes us and we take with the queen, not only is our queen on a nice diagonal, but it opens up the f3 square for our knight, which is where our knight wants to go to get in here. So by helping us move our queen away, that doesn't make sense for him. Also, it looks like white can maybe... I was thinking maybe you can try to take back with a pawn and plant your knight in here, but you still have to deal with c5. Either way, you can definitely just take with the queen and open up this square for your knight. So I don't like this. That's what white does. And now black makes another move I don't like, and that's knight c6. And you'll see that the bars doesn't actually move a lot on all of these moves I don't like. But the bar is kind of, it's a computer. And humanly speaking, it's a lot easier to deconstruct my center if you have the move c5 available. And now that your knight's in front of it, you can no longer play c5. Also, you can't play this, you're not supporting it because that square's covered. So unless your idea is for some reason to try to get your knight to a5 immediately because you think it's super important, but even then these squares are covered, so I don't like this move. It doesn't really make sense to me. I think either knight here in c5, maybe you could play c5 immediately, maybe you could just castle. Either way, all those I like better than this move. And now white looks like he has options. I'm looking at, you have safe moves like castle. You have moves like put your knight on f3 and develop. You probably can do things. I mean, one of those moves makes a lot of sense, right? You don't need many more candidates. c4, I don't like. It's, I mean, you should just castle before you do anything like that. If you're gonna contest the center like that or open it up, there's no reason to have your king on e1. So I would definitely delay this move and prepare first by castling. Also, I don't like this move because your rook isn't on c1 yet. And what is that? And you're like, what does that have to do with anything? Well, what happens is when you go c4, you're opening up the b4 square for his knight, and you're justifying its placement here. Before it was bad, a misplaced knight. Oops, oh no. Yeah, before it was a bad knight because it didn't have anywhere to go and it had no function. As soon as you push this pawn, you now give it this square. And in a lot of openings, the knight will go to b4 and it will attack this bishop. And the maneuver you want to be able to play is bishop back to b1, controlling the knight squares, getting the bishop out of the way, and protecting the a2 pawn. The reason I don't like it here is because your rook's on a1, and so you're trapping your own rook. If your rook was on c1, then you would have good harmony. And so that's why this move is premature. Also, if you're going to attack the center, you want, like, the goal in chess is for the d4 and e4 push, right? It would even be e4 and f4 if that were possible in more situations. But let's say d4 and e4. So that's like the perfect pawn center. The only reason you really push c4 alongside d4 is because they don't really let you push e4. So, like, the reason people play d4 and then c4 is because you can always play that. It's always available. But the goal is actually to play these two squares. But oftentimes they don't let you play both of those in the center. It's only one or the other. So that's why. But if you have the chance, and you do have the chance in this situation, instead of c4, you can actually push e4 And this has many advantages. One, it doesn't open up the square for the knight, so you don't have to worry about this. Two, if he takes and you get your knight in, you know, even if he trades or even if he doesn't trade, you have perfect harmony in your position with a queen on f4. You're ready to castle, put a rook on e1, and your position looks really nice. So if you're going to push a pawn, e4 is the right pawn, not c4. And that's aside from the fact that c4 is bad because of knight b4 in this specific position. So you go c4, which is the right way to do your pawns if e4 is not available. This is the right way. Not now because it's premature, but this is normal. I see what you're doing. It's fine if the timing was right. So he takes instead of going knight b4, so he doesn't see it. Taking, I mean, kind of justifies your move again. It makes it not bad again. You see, the thing is, your rook is still not on c1. So if you take with the knight, and excuse me, and he goes knight b4, again, you have to, you know, if you bring the bishop back, you trap your rook. Otherwise, you give it up. And you can't go off the diagonal to like e2 because then he has this fork of your rook and your king. So you kind of should take with the bishop so that knight b4 doesn't actually matter because you can castle. Okay, so you take with the knight. Again, it's not losing or anything, but now you have to deal with knight b4 again, and I guess maybe you might have to give up your bishop because, again, you can't go here because of the fork. Going here is a little suspicious. So he does finally see it, and let's see your response. You go back here. I understand this is normally the right thing to do, but the rook is normally on c1. Now in this case, it's not the end of the world, but now you have to kick his knight, bring your bishop back to where it belongs, and then go c1. It just takes time. Also, your king's still in the center. You got to get it out of the center. So he could have played queen to d5, attacking your knight and attacking the pawn. And you have to protect the knight, let's say. So you go knight e5, and then he's going to take your pawn. And then you have to go queen f3, contesting, and it's protected by the knight. So that's not good for you, but he doesn't see it. He goes knight d5, hitting your queen. That's fair. That's a fair move. Well, let's see. What do? You move your queen back to g3, hitting his pawn. That makes sense. I assume he's gonna castle. He castles. Yes. We got him castling finally. Big fan of that. And the position looks fine. I mean, ideally, you want his bishop somewhere else. You want your rook here, but your position's fine. He goes b5, which is incredibly suspicious. He's playing well for a 1000 though. But this move I don't like again. Because, again, black really wants to play c5 to challenge our center, you know, with a rook behind it or something, or he really wants to play c5, and once he goes b5, he's creating these weaknesses now for my pieces. So for example, if I get a knight, let's say I go knight here and put a knight here, that's really bad for him, because it blockades his c pawn. He never gets c5, and without c5, he can never really equalize the position. So I don't like this move. It's extremely counterproductive for black. So you have to move your knight. Okay, I think knight a5 or knight e5. Knight e5 is the more natural square. So you go knight e5. Boom. Queen e8. Another move I don't like. It's not that these are like huge blunders, it's just they don't really make sense. They're not logical. Okay, so maybe black saw that, I don't know, the knight was gonna go here and it would hit the queen. So he thought maybe I'll sidestep and control this diagonal. But not only does that keep the rooks disconnected, which means you're not having completed development, but that's like a band-aid to the problem. It's like an artificial solution. The solution is you need to get this pawn past this square. You need to push c5. Even here, I mean, I don't know what the engine thinks, but c5 right away. Just sack it and get your rook to c1 and get these files open. Because if you let the knight or the rook or any piece, you know, cement itself here, your position's just lost strategically, I think. As black. So I really don't like queen e8. Hey buddy, what are you doing? a3? Come on, guy. a3. Okay, so I'm guessing this was your train of thought. I want to put my bishop here, but I have to worry about knight b4 again, right? And I don't want to have to go back. So let me play a3 and stop this. I'm guessing that's what you were thinking. But the situation here is different. How is it different? Well, previously, when his knight went to b4, he had this idea in some lines of putting his knight here, forking the king and the rook. But now you're castled, and that's why castling's awesome. So you don't have to worry about that. And what's the big deal about that? It's that in the lines we were looking at, the reason that was relevant is because we couldn't put our bishop on this diagonal anymore because of that fork. But now there's no fork, so now we have the extra option of putting our bishop on e2. So for example, we go here, knight attacks us, bishop e2, no fork. Voila. So a3 is actually an unnecessary move and a waste of time. Okay. So anyway, you go a3. It's not a losing move. It still does control the square from the knight, so it's not like the end of the world. But if you have a choice between pawn move and piece move, and you can make a piece move work, I'd go for the piece move. Knight h5. This guy's smoking something because there is no attack on white's king right now. And what? So black moves to the side to make a one move attack, but he completely destabilizes the knight. I want all the newer players to notice that it's unprotected, and the knight's just better on f6. That's right, protecting its army and being protected in turn. Now on the rim, once the queen moves, what's the point? Okay, so the queen moves like with an attack and what? And he goes back. He goes back. So yeah, there's obviously no point of that. You just gave free moves to your opponent, which is awesome. Ooh, I don't like this move at all. What? I thought your idea with a3 was to put your bishop on d3 and not worry about this. So why the heck did you play a3? Well, I guess you were still worried about this, but why is your bishop on c2? So a few things I want to point out. The bishop on c2 is misplaced because A, you're blocking the c file from your rooks. B, bishop on d3 pressures the b5 pawn. Right? Like this here hits this pawn, keeps this open for the rooks. This, there's no argument really to be made for this, unless you really wanted to play a4 for some reason. But natural, efficient, and effective development is more important than pawn play. Master development first and find out where your pieces belong. So bishop to d3 should be instinct. A5 does absolutely nothing. I have no idea what this is. He should be trying to play for c5, not a5, because this is still a huge gaping weakness in the position, and neither player seems to really care. Neither player seems to take advantage of it. I would have rushed to put a piece here. I would have rushed to get a rook to c1 and then plant the knight there. But let's see what white has in store. Okay, rook ac1 makes sense, but this bishop is now you should be able to clearly see that your position would have been better if this bishop wasn't here. It was on d3, because you would immediately pressure the pawn and immediately threaten to put your knight here. He goes b4. I think he's just maybe hoping for takes and he can bring his knight in. I mean, who cares either way, but I would just ignore it and move this bishop. I would ignore it and move this bishop so I can play along the c file and dominate his position. So you take the pawn, which I don't like. Why don't I like it? Well, he has the option of improving his knight. He has the option of taking with the pawn and improving his rook significantly. So I don't like improving his pieces. There was nothing to, let's say you did something else and he took you and you took back. This pawn is in front of this pawn, so his rook isn't going anywhere. It still controls this square for the knight, and he isn't pressuring it anymore. So there was no reason to take, but whatever, it's not a big deal. He takes with the pawn. Now you can see his rook is really nice. But okay, he still has this major positional weakness. So let's see how white plays from here. But why? Is it to control this square? I'm guessing you didn't want him to come in here and attack this pawn. I'm guessing that. But suspicious. It's awfully suspicious. Let's put it that way. I mean, actually, it might be the best move in this. It might be the best move, actually. Yeah, actually, that's probably the best move. Either way, I think it's the best move. You got your piece out of the way of the rook, so that's the goal. So his pawn is hanging kind of, but I don't even know if he sees it. Like if you play e4, and kick this knight. This is undefended and your rook can take maybe. So I don't know if he saw that or he was just doing it anyway, but he goes to c6. It's now defended by the queen and defending the knight. Again, though, it's still a backwards pawn. So these, it's still positionally very weak. And wait, this pawn's hanging. What? I mean, I saw this was defended, but it's hit twice. So you could just take it, and you do take it. So yeah, c6 was just a terrible move by your opponent. And now you're just crushing. He goes for this pin, but it's not a pin because you can move the knight. And you go knight back. I like it. Excuse me. He takes the rook. Okay, I mean, I guess. What else? He doesn't really have anything to do. Knight to d7. I mean, it's hard to find moves for him here because it almost feels like he's down a piece for some reason, but he needs to get active as fast as possible. I mean, because you're not really threatening, to win a piece or even a pawn. So he needs to activate. So like queen here or here. Maybe here. A little suspicious. Like I like queen a8, like maybe. To try to get his rook out. But either way, I don't like it for black. This move I definitely don't like. It looks wrong. First of all, as soon as he moves this away, he's undefending this square. And that square is hit twice. So if you take this knight, and he takes your bishop, you win a pawn. If you take his knight, and he takes your knight, you take his knight. He takes your bishop, you take a pawn, and you win a pawn. So you could probably take his knight here. But instead, you go bishop a4 because you see a pin and you think it's juicy. That's fair. I won't criticize you for that. But this is a relatively simple tactic, so you should probably look at the forcing moves first. And checks are ridiculous, but the captures, I mean, they both need to be looked at, and then threats. But so before you get to this move, you really should have gone through the captures. But okay, this move is the threat. It does have some sneakiness, sneaky venom, and well, not so sneaky. It's kind of obvious what you're doing, but you could apply more and more pressure. So the thing is, his knight is hit twice, and he has to find a way to defend it. His only other piece that can defend it is this knight. Oops. So the moves that look like they defend it are here, here. But I think they lose. Because if he goes here, it looks like he hits your bishop and defends the knight. And if you take with the bishop, he takes with the knight. No more pin, even trade. But if this guy goes here, no, I mean if this guy goes here and you take with the knight, right, you got a piece. If he takes your bishop, he has a piece, but then you win the rook, the exchange. So he can't take your bishop. If he backs up and takes your knight, the pin is still on, and you can go queen b7, adding extra pressure, and he doesn't have any more defenders, so I think you win a piece. So he can't go there. I think he has to take your knight. If he takes your knight, he's up a piece. If you take the knight back, it's even, but then he takes your bishop, he's up a piece. So you can't do that. If he takes your knight, since you can't take his knight, you have to take his queen. So it's a knight for a queen. But he takes your queen with check. So right now he's up a piece. You have to take his knight because you're in check. Equality. He takes your bishop. Up a knight. So I think he has to take the knight to defend. And if he goes knight to f6, then again, you just take with the knight, and the pin is still on, and you have queen b7. Okay, so he does defend with the knight. I'm just curious, though. If he takes this... Okay, so this is the defense. You take his queen, but then he wins. Yeah, that's what I thought. So you can't take his queen. So black has to have... and if you can't take his knight, because then he's up a knight, I think. So... right now he's up material. Right? I get a piece, he gets a queen, blah, blah, blah. Can you take this? Queen d5, let's go. Takes, 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 takes. Boom. Okay, I suppose I don't expect you to find that. Or him. Okay, so you played bishop a4, and he blunders. And the only reason this knight takes knight thing is even a thing is because you take the queen with check. So, I think. So, he goes here. And now, a common mistake would just be to take with the bishop. But you find the right capture. And you take with the knight. He takes, and now this is a pin. So as white, we want to try to find a way to apply pressure because he can't defend it again. His rook is stuck. His king is stuck. They're off in Never Never Land. So queen b7 looks strong. Queen c6 adds a second attacker, but it's important to note that now the queen is in front, not the bishop. So it's no longer a pin. And let's say the knight goes to f6. Queen takes queen, knight takes queen, and it, you know, there's nothing, you don't win anything. So queen c6 probably bad. Queen b7 probably good. There's rook to c7, adding pressure. That looks dubious. Because if the knight jumps into here, again, how do these tactics work out? Because if you take his queen, he takes your queen with check. Then you get a piece, then he gets a piece, and then rook b7, he can go rook c8, king h2, he could defend or attack, and he defends. Okay, so you go with the rook. Again, I think he has 95 resource. And if you take the knight, he takes the bishop. And you don't want that. But there's no way he's going to see that. So he moves his queen out of the pin. But this is hit twice, so you could take. Doesn't matter where his queen goes. The most natural move here, not like, forget about if it's the best move, right? I wouldn't even take the time to figure out if it's the best move, right? I would just insta go b3 because they defend each other and you know you never have to worry about it. Sure, if this is like a classical game, you want to take the time because your bishop, you don't want to take the time here because you're up a piece, but um, conceptually, if it was even material, you would look at b3 and consider if your bishop is a little off sides because it can't go back to this diagonal to go somewhere else. So that's one reason you might, in a different scenario, not want to play b3. But here, you're up a piece. Who cares? You're going to win either way. I would just go b3 to avoid any tricks and anything. You see, like, okay, I don't know. It activates the queen, but to where? To this side of the board? I don't know. I like the b3. It's just simpler. Okay, just take the queen. You're up a piece. Rook c7. What? What's the point of this move, though? Just take the queen, right? Like, if you're saying, oh, take me. I mean, just take him, right? Right, let's say you take. He takes. b3. I mean, you don't have to be afraid of this because you could let him in here. There's nothing here. You're going to have this and your king here, right? Everything's defended. His rook can be in the back rank and has no targets, nothing to do. But you go here. Rook b8. Don't understand this. I would just take his queen. Take his queen. He trades, and now you could do whatever you want. Again, b3 is the simplest because now you control the c file, so he can't even put his rook to c8. So just b3 and GG's. I mean, this isn't a big deal because he has no counterplay, but still, you don't want to get into the habit of letting him in your back rank and things like that. Because in different games, it will matter. Okay, one, you move your king, and he goes after this. Okay, what am I doing here? I'm tempted to go d5 and sack everything. I want to go d5, and then if he takes my pawn, I want to take this pawn. I don't even want to push, because then a 1000 will definitely take the bishop. And then I want to go e7. His king can't go in front, and if the rook goes behind, he loses the rook. So that's a pretty funny line, although definitely not forced. The simplest thing is probably to go rook here, or rook here. Let him take this stupid pawn. You capture his pawn, defending the bishop, and now you have a 5-on-4 with up a bishop. GG. Instead, you go rook c2. Not a fan of this. There's no reason to go passive like this. You probably thought, well, I'm going to be super defensive, and that's fine, but you want to be confident enough and strong enough to trust your calculation and realize that just take this pawn, defend this bishop. He can have this pawn. He can even have this, but you wouldn't let him. You would just go king g3. So you defend. It's whatever. It's perfectly fine. g5. He has nothing to do. This move doesn't matter in either direction. And now you get your bishop out of the way. I don't know what you're planning though, but let's see. He moves his king up. Sensible. Now you go b3. Finally, the construction that you needed just to make life simple. King f6. It is important to have your king active in the endgame, but it's not going to help. Rook c5. I mean, you're very against taking this pawn. It is a free pawn, sir. And if you're going rook c5 instead of taking the pawn, you better be trying to set up some type of mate, but that's not a mate. But okay, you cut the king off. It's very, very nice square for the rook. Probably one of the best squares on the board, but it is also a free pawn. Rook to b2, attacking this. Toothless threat, doesn't matter at all. King g3, perfect. No problems there. He now moves his rook here, which does nothing. So now you can take this pawn. Now he goes for it. Let's go. A move that does absolutely nothing. We take the pawn. A move that does nothing. You even contest the c file. And he's just playing waiting moves. Now you have ideas like this. Hopefully you want to be strong enough to realize this pawn doesn't matter, but of course, no reason to give it up at the same time. You want to not give it up because you don't have to, but also be strong enough to realize that you can give it up if you want. But yeah, it's just an easy path to promotion. The easiest thing is if you had a rook trade available, but he's just going to move his rook around the board. So yeah, you just push, perfect. You push, perfect. I would almost want to sack here, but in this specific case, if you go, takes, and you push, he can get behind. So yeah. So you defend it this way, that's fine. He probably, if he goes here, he can stop it for one more move, but either way it makes no difference because you just push. Hopefully you can ignore and push. And let's see how you finished it here. Maybe something like this. Okay, protecting the pawn, maybe creating a ladder guy. King comes in, but now rook. Oh no, now you can queen with check. Which you find very nice. And he resigns. Wow. That was a good game. Very good game. You both, I think, played maybe even better than your ratings. But, yep. Develop instead of this. C4 instead of C3. Not the best. Not the best. Not the best. Not the best. Yeah, he missed queen d5. Okay, so there were mistakes, a lot more mistakes and bad moves on his side. Hopefully, by watching this, you can pay more attention to the notes I made from your position as white. And I hope it made some sense. You can submit another game. I think it's, although you made plenty of things to comment on, a lot of times it's even more instructive to post games that you lost or games you don't understand how to, like why you got a bad position out of the opening, or how to defend a certain position, something like that. You kind of creamed this 1000, although there were still plenty of instructive moments. So hopefully that made sense to you. Oh, sorry, Pony. Do we need 1080p 60? Honestly, I don't know how to even change that stuff. Like, I never even changed the settings, so I'm guessing that's my default. Alright, anyway, as far as YouTube goes, goodbye.